Then what we need to do, we have to provide access on all these 10 databases to this particular user. So how many grant statements I have to execute? 10 grant statements like this, right? Grant select on this view 1 to the new user, and then grant select on the view 2 on new user. Like this, I have to grant 10 different grant statements to provide access to all the 10 views or databases, whatever objects. Okay, so how many rows are inserted in the access rights table now? For each grant, one statement, right? So 10 statements got inserted into the access rights table to provide the information that this particular user has access on all the 10 views. Okay, now one more user joined the application, the second user. Then again, I have to execute all the 10 statements again. So all 10 rows will be inserted into the access rights table. So totally how many? 20. In a similar way, I have total 10 users who has to get access on all these 10 objects. Then total how many rows will be inserted in the access rights table? 10 multiplied with 10, 100. Okay, and I have to execute 100 statements individually like this, and this cause 100 rows to be inserted into the access rights table, right? And then one more new user added, the 11th user. So 110 access rights. Totally 110 rows will be inserted in dbc.accessRights table. Okay, this is how generally the access will be given. Okay. Can we optimize this process of granting accesses? Because it is very manual work, right? It is very manual work. The number of rows inserted are more, and the management of access are also very complex. For example, after 3 months, we decided to decommission one of the object, or all these users should not have access on this object. That was decided, and they have sent a request to revoke the access on this particular object to all these 10 users. Then what I need to do? Again, I have to revoke the access of the users on this particular object, and I have to execute 10 revoke statements so that all those rows will be deleted correspondingly from the dbc.accessRights table. Okay, for granting 10 statements, for revoking again 10 statements, okay, which is uniform across all the users. Okay, so the maintenance is difficult, and the number of rows inserted into the DBC tables, okay, the IO operations to the DBC tables, and the memory required for DBC tables is relatively high. So what is the solution, or what is the optimized way of granting accesses on the objects to the users? Okay, so from V2 R5 onwards in Teradata, they have come up with the mechanism called role. What is a role? Role is an object which is created and aligned with the accesses which are required for a particular application. Let's see the definitions. A role is a simply collection of access rights. Okay. So role is an object which consists of a set of access rights. Okay. And these rights are first granted to this role, and the roles are granted to the users again. A DBA can create different roles for different job functions and responsibilities based on the roles and responsibilities of particular users or a group of users. We will create a role and will grant all the access to this role first, and whoever join with these roles and responsibilities, that particular user is granted with this role access. So what is the benefit of it? Roles can help reduce the number of rows in the dbc.accessRights table. So we'll see how it will reduce. See, so this is the mechanism. We have all the same objects for which we have to grant access to the users. But now we don't directly give access to this user group. What we do, first we will create a role. How do we create a role? It is the syntax. Create role, role underscore X. This is the SQL. Okay, you may use the administrator tool or you may use stored procedure macro, but internally the core SQL, what you are going to execute to create a role is create role, role X. And then you will grant all the accesses to the role first. See, grant select on the view 1 to role X. Similarly, the second view also is granted to the role X, view 2. Like this, all the 10 views first will be granted to the role. So how many rows or how many statements I have to execute here? 10 grant statements to give all the accesses to the role. Okay, now the users started joining the application. What I'll do, I don't give access to the direct object, but I will give access to this role. How do I give? Grant role X to the new user, so that this new user automatically get access of this 10 views through the role, because role is already having access on all the 10 objects, and now we are granting this role to this user so that the user start getting accesses on all the 10 objects. How many statements I have given here? Only one statement, but he got 10 accesses. Okay. Similarly, if other users also join, the 10 users, so how many statements I have to execute? I have to execute 10 grant statements to grant access of this role to the users. Automatically they will get access of 10 objects. I execute only 10 statements, but totally 100 accesses will be given. And all these roles, whenever we grant, these will be stored in the database dictionary table called role grants, dbc.role grants, and not in the access rights. How many rows are stored in the role grants? Only 10 rows. So earlier it was almost 110 for 11 users, which are stored in the dbc.access rights, but now we have optimized it by creating a role so that only 10 rows are stored in dbc.role grants. In terms of memory, it's fine. Okay, we got some optimization in terms of memory. And how about the management of the role? Okay, with less number of statements, we are giving whatever access that application user should get. And after some time, if they say this particular access should be revoked from all the users of this application, then what we do? We simply revoke the access of this object from this role, so that automatically these 10 users would lose the access on this particular object. Right? So we no need to revoke individually for all the users, because all are of same application and with same roles. So if I revoke access of this particular object from this role, then automatically all this user would lose the access on that object. And again, after some time, if they wanted to add some other new object to this role, then again I will grant access on this particular role only, so that automatically they will get access on the new object. So the management of accesses is also very simple with the role. Okay, so that is the advantage of the roles, where it will simplify the memory usage, the IO operations of the data dictionaries, and the manageability of the accesses of the objects on the users. And how do we implement all this? To create a role, what all access we require? We should get the create role access and drop role access. So these are some extra access rights what we need to get to create the role and drop the role. Initially, only the DBC user would have this create role and drop role access rights. Okay. Who is the DBC? The super user, which is configured at the time of Teradata configuration for the organization. Only he, the DBC user, has the create role and drop role accesses. But with the DBC, we generally don't do any operations, right? Because he is a super user, and if the password of the DBC is known to all, then it is difficult to manage. So what we do, from the DBC, we'll grant this create role and drop role accesses to the sysdba, who is the super DBA for applications, the second level of authority. That means after DBC, the sysdba is the authority who has all the accesses, right? So what they do, log in with DBC, and then they will grant this create role and drop role to the sysdba with grant option. What is this with grant option here? So sysdba is master for all the applications. Let's suppose I have 10 applications, and sysdba is master of all the 10 applications. For each and every application, the sysdba needs to create the roles. He can grant access to the application related DBAs to manage their own applications, right? So what DBC does, DBC has granted the create role and drop role access to the sysdba with grant option, so that sysdba can also grant this role access to the individual application DBAs. If we don't give with grant option, sysdba can create the roles and drop the roles, but he cannot grant this access to any other application DBAs. Okay, to enable sysdba to grant the create role and drop role accesses to other DBAs, they should use with grant option while providing access to the sysdba user. And once the accesses are given, then only we can execute this create role. And then we will grant accesses, the required accesses on the objects to these roles. Grant, select, execute on HRVM to HR role. Similarly, we will give all the accesses which are required for that role with the grant statement. And then we grant that role to the users who should be having all these accesses. Grant HR role to user. And now when this user 1 logs in with this user ID and password, he can enable his role. Whatever his current role, that will be enabled. Okay. Till V2 or 5, only one role can be his session's current or active role. That means this user 1 belongs to the HR department, and we have granted him HR role. So when he logs in, the HR role will be activated, and he can access only the objects which are related to HR application. For example, this user 1 belongs to some other application also, the payroll application also, and payroll role also granted to this user 1. And when he logs in, only one role would be active. Means, okay, he can set up what role it should be active when he log in defaultly, and during the execution of the session he can decide which role should be active. Okay, he can change his role with this command, set role role name. For example, this user 1 has two roles aligned to him, HR role and payroll role. By default, he has one role activated. How it is activated? While creation of the user itself, you can mention what role defaultly you should have. Default role. You may modify the user and align this role, or while creation of the user itself, you can mention what is the role he should have defaultly. So whenever he log in, the user 1, what is the role activated for his session? The HR and score role. So he can access only the HR related objects. But in case if he is already granted with some other accesses, some other applications, then he has to use the set role command to activate other roles during the session. Okay, so when he activated the other role, he will lose accesses which are granted to this HR role in this session. Okay, so after logging in, he can use the set role command to activate the other role what he already assigned with. But defaultly this one role will be activated, and he was granted with other role also. To activate it, he has to use the explicit set command, set role name. Then he start accessing all the payroll related objects. After V2R 5.0, that means the next version, V2R 5.1, there was an enhancement at the role where a user can activate all his role at once. Okay, with the command called set role all, or while creation of the user, you can mention default role as all. This all keyword indicates that whatever roles this user has, all the roles will be activated at the same time so that he can do the cross analysis of the applications. Earlier, either he can access only HR department or a payroll department. If you wanted to join payroll database to a HR database, he cannot do, because either one access he will have. So he cannot do a cross application analysis. But after V2R 5.1, with the command set role all, he can activate all his roles so that he can do cross application analysis. Okay. So by default, if you give all access, whatever applications he is aligned with and whatever roles he was granted with, all roles will be activated, and he can access all the application at once at the same time. But as per ANSI, we should not have multiple roles activated at the same time. ANSI notice, a session that has only one current role complies with the ANSI standard. If we have multiple roles activated in the same session, it is not compliant with ANSI, but it is an extension of Teradata from V2R 5.1 onwards. Okay. We'll see some practical session how to create a role through the administrator. We'll see the various differences. Any questions, anyone so far? What is a role? What are the advantages of the role? How we create a role? What are the accesses we require to create a role? How we'll align with the users? How we can modify the users and grant? How we can activate the roles during the sessions? Clear? Good. Okay, we'll see how we create them through the Teradata administrator. So I'm logging in with TD admin. Okay. So now see the tools menu here. From here, see create the roles. Okay. So in the administrator, the tools menu, create role. Just click on this. You will have a pop-up. So you just type the role name here. Role 1. And the description of the role. First role. Okay. Now, just create it. So this is the SQL which is going to be executed. Create role, the role 1. Just click on the execute button here, run query. See, create completed. Okay. So thus we logged in with the DBC user. So DBC user is already having the access of create roles and drop roles. That's where we were able to create a role here. Okay. So once we create the role, what is the next step? We have to grant accesses to this role. Right? Okay. Grant the object rights to what? To the role, right? So select the roles here. You see, do we have our role displaying here? No, right? We have created role 1, but it is not there. Okay, what could be the issue? The DBC is not refreshed after we create the role. What you do, select the DBC here and refresh it. F5. F5 would refresh the DBC so that the newly created role will be displayed in the object rights. See, role 1 is displayed here. And now you select the objects on which you want to grant access to this role 1. So we give access on this retail, what we generally use. So on retail database to the role 1, I want to give the select access. Grant. See, this is this way. Grant select on the retail object to the role 1. Execute it. Grant completed. So now role 1 has select access on the retail objects. Now what is the next step? Anyone? I have created the role, I have granted the access, then what I will do with this role? We'll create a user with this role. Create a user role 1. Who is the owner? Let us take sysadmin as the owner. Sysadmin. When you say owner, sysadmin will contribute space for this user role 1. So he would get automatic access on user role 1. Okay. Password. Same password I am typing. The user underscore role 1 I used as password. Pump space 1 KB. I don't want to waste my pump space, so I'm just giving KBs just to see the access, right? And in real time also, whenever they create users, they will create 0 pump space so that they won't create any objects within their own pump space. Okay, they will be granted access on the databases where they can create the objects. But give 1 MB dump space 0. Yeah. Account string high priority user, so $H underscore the account string expansion on daily basis. Then default database retail, can mention it, not mandatory. and the profile. Okay, we'll see profile later. First we'll see the role. What is the role we want to grant? The role 1. All are default journals. I don't want any general, I don't want fallback. Just create the user. See, default role is the role 1. Now execute it. Grant completed. So user 1 has the role 1 aligned to him. That means what access he has, the user role 1, what access he already got by creation of this user with the role 1. Select access on
Retail.
retail, right? We didn't give any access to user role 1, but he defaultly got it through the role 1. So now what we do, we'll log in with that user through SQL Assistant and try to access the object in the retail. By default, you should not have any access, right? If we don't give role, when we try to select retail, you will get an access. Okay? No select access on the objects. So how to log in with the user? First I have to create the DSN. So tools, define ODBC, add a new DSN, select the Teradata, finish it, and give the role DSN role 1. Role test is the purpose of this DSN. What is the host name? Local TD. Username is user underscore role 1. The same password, user underscore role 1. Okay. General practice is you should not save the password in the DSN, but here I am saving it in order to avoid typing of the passwords. But generally in real time, the best practice is you should not store your password in the DSNs. So now I would like to connect with my role, DSN role 1. Just now I created for role test. Okay, so now he successfully logged on. Let me try accessing the objects of retail. Select star from. See, because we set retail has its default database, it has pulled the retail database when he logged in default. Select star from retail dot cust2. See, I didn't give any access to him directly, but through the role he got the access. Right? Now I would like to revoke this access. How you can do that? I want to revoke the select access of this retail object on the role, and I want to test if this role would affect this user or not. How will do that? We'll revoke on the role 1. You select the role tab here and select the role 1 and the object from which you want to revoke the accesses on retail. So before revoke, if you want to see what accesses he has, just click on display. Okay, it will get you what all accesses he already has. And now select what are you want to deactivate. Okay. Select whatever you want to revoke, just click on the revoke button. Okay. So this is the statement. revoke select on retail from the role 1. So I'm just revoking it. See, revoke completed. Now I have already logged in with this user, so let us see. The user does not have any select access on the retail cust2. Okay, so that's how the role will impact all the users who are already aligned with. If 10 users are aligned with this user, all the 10 users would lose access on the retail object. Not only one object, that role may have access on some several objects, 10 objects or 20 objects. All the access will be lost. Okay, so this is simple to manage the accesses. Otherwise, what I should do? I should execute 10 revoke statements to make all these 10 users lose the access on the required objects. Okay, so here it is simple with the role where you can revoke access on the role. It will impact all the users automatically. So now for the existing user, I want to give this role access. Okay, let me grant the access again back. How we grant it? Grant, you see it again. I'm just showing it for our purpose. Grant, select the role 1, select the object on which you want to grant him the access. Okay, and you may mention at any object level also. If you want to grant only on this area 1 table, you can do that. Or if you want to select only the views, if there are, you can select. At object level also you can do that. And we'll see the database level. Now I'm again granting him the access. Grant completed. And now you can access the object. Okay. Now my requirement is to grant this role to other user who was already created. Earlier this user underscore role 1, during the creation of the user we have given the role, but now I would like to give him the existing user. Okay, let me try the first user. Okay, there is a first user. How I will grant access to the existing user? Use the modify user. Yeah, modify the user, first user, select that user to whom you want to grant, and then tools, modify user. So these are read-only fields. Now these all options you can change. You can change the password, you can change the spaces, you can change the account strings, you can change the default database, profiles, roles. See the role? Type here. Okay, let us see. Modify user. Okay, here the role. Okay, he was already having all roles. Okay, that's where we have to explicitly give the role 1 where okay, as he already has all roles access, we are not able to give specific role because he was already enabled with all. Let us see one more user. Mono user. Modify the user. These are the roles he already has. Okay. What we'll do? The administer. Okay, so modify user would show you all the roles what he already has. If you want to grant, you have to use the administer the roles. Select the role the role 1, the description what we have given, and the new users to which you want to grant. So some new users will see. So user 1 already, user role 1 has access on role 1, so it is showing in this role members. And user 1 also I am trying to add, so that grant role 1 to the user 1. Execute it. Okay, so now we have to refresh DBC, just refresh it with the function F5. Now if you see the roles, the role 1, you see user 1 is also granted access. Okay, so with the grant option, if you want to give him with the admin option, you have to select this box, so that this user 1 can also grant access of these roles to other users. Otherwise he can just use these accesses, but if you want to give a grant option, you just select the green button here with admin option. If you want to make this role as his default role, just select this, so that it will be his default role. Okay, so he already has some default role, that's why it is not taking up here. So to change the default role of this user 1, then again you have to modify the users, tools, modify user of this user 1, select the user 1, okay, user 1, see the role 1, he has all roles enabled, and now this role 1 is also granted to him. So if you want to make this role 1 as its default, you can modify the user here. This is the way how we can grant role to the existing user. Okay, while creation of the user, how to assign the role we saw in the create user. Okay, in the role we'll give the role to which you want to align with. And to the existing user, how we would do that? Tools, administer the roles. Yeah, select the role, select the user, add him. So that first user would also get the access. Okay, directly it won't show here because it is the ODBC client. We have to refresh so that it will fetch again the fresh data from the DBC tables. So we have to refresh it. And see. When you select the role, it will show you what all users are aligned to this. If you want to provide him the grant access with admin option, so that first user can also grant accesses of these roles to other users, you can do that. Or if you want to make it its default, you can do that. If we don't have any other defaults, it will take it here. Otherwise, you have to modify this user. How to modify this user? Select that user where he is, then modify the user. See here, you don't have any role assigned to it. That's why we were able to grant him the default access there. Otherwise, you should come here and give the default role. Okay, so these are several options and several constraints what we see. Okay. Now we create one more role. Any questions, anyone so far? With the single role we played. Any question? Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create one more role. Create role 2. second role, and for this role I will grant access on the other database. What is the other database? We have retail and financial, right? We have one more database, financial, in the demo version. So we'll grant access to role 2, role, where is role 2? We have to refresh. Role 2 to the financial database. Okay, select, grant. Now this user 1 who already has access on retail, okay, he has access on retail, but if you see, he won't be having access on the financial. So let us see. I will add database to this console, financial, to see what all objects exist, and I will try to access one object of financial. Because he don't have access, right? Okay. The administrator, messy. So these are the tables, right? And EMP1 is there here. So let me try. Let's start from financial dot EMP1. So here the user does not have select access on financial dot employee1. So now what I'm trying to do, I will grant the second role access, that means the financial database access, to this particular user. Okay. What do we do? Tool grant object rights the role 2 on financial. We already granted it, right? Okay, I think we already granted it, but still I'm doing it again. We granted it, and now this role should be granted to the user. I will do that. Administer roles, select the role 2 and select the user to whom we want to give this access. See, grant completed. Okay, now if we refresh again, you can see that, right? Tools, administer the role, you see the role 2, you can identify, okay, user 1 has access of this role. It is not the default role, and it does not have any with admin option, but it is the part of the role 2 access. Okay. Now if I access this object, can I able to see the data of financial.emp1 or not? Can anyone tell me? Can I access the MP1 from the financial database with this user role 1? Let me see. See, the user does not have select access on the employee 1. Still it is saying we don't have any access, but I have granted it, right? I have created the role and I have granted this role to the user 1, but still it is not accessing. It is not able to access. What I need to do now? Any options? What I need to do to enable my role 2? I can do is set role command. after logging into the session, if I want to enable my sessions, if I want to enable any other role after logging into the session, you have to use the command set role name, right? That's what we have seen here. Set role, the role name. Here you have logged in with the default role, but we want to enable the other role during the session. You have to use explicit command called set role name. Set role 2 is not granted. Okay, let's see. Tools, administer roles, the role 2 to the user 1. Okay, what is the user? We are using user underscore role, right? This is the user. Sorry. Okay, this is the user. What we are trying with. Function F5, refresh, tools, administer roles. Now if you see the role 2, user underscore role 1 is the user what we logged in with. Now you have to set role for this user underscore role 1. See, one row processed. So whatever roles he was aligned with, you can change those roles during the session dynamically. Now if I access this, I can access it. Otherwise I cannot access it till I activate. Now if I activate this role 2, can I access this retail objects? See, the user does not have select access on retail because I have enabled the other role. Now I want to enable this role 1. Now select it. See, now I can use access the retail objects but not from the financial. See, the user does not have select. So how I can activate all the roles at once during the session? I have aligned with these 2 roles, but I am not able to access objects of both the databases at the same time. How can I activate both the accesses? Anyone can remember? Okay. What the command I can use to activate all the roles at the same time?
Role all.
Yeah. Set role all, enable to set all his roles activated at the same time. Now if I access retail, I can access. If I want to access financial, I can access during the same session. I can join the retail object with financial now if I want, because I have activated all the roles. Okay. The default role for this user role 1 is what? For this user role 1, what is the default role? How you can see the modify user of the user role 1, you can see. And this is the user role 1. Modify it. The default role is role 1, but now I would like to make his default role as all, so that after he log in, he no need to activate his roles manually with the set role commands. But if I mention all roles here and modify the user by setting all roles, once he log in, I'm just disconnecting now, and I'm connecting. Where is this? Oh, DSL role 1. So at the time of login itself, the default role will be all. That means he can access all the objects like that. Okay, if anyone is belonging to many applications, okay, we will grant him multiple roles and will enable all, so that by the time of login itself, you start accessing all the objects, retail and then financial, everything you can access. So this is all about the roles. We have nested roles. That means a role can also have access on the other roles. That means we can create a role with the combination of two or multiple roles. Okay, with these grant statements, grant role A to role AB and grant role B to role AB, so that the accesses of A and B both are given to the AB, so that if you grant this role AB to any of the user, he will start having all the accesses of A and B both. So it is called as nested rolling. Multiple levels of nested rolling is not possible. It is allowed at only one level of nesting. If you want to nest multiple levels, it is not possible as of now. Get role A and role AB and then again role AC. It is not possible like this, but you can have a role created with two roles. That is possible. And with admin option we have seen, right? If I have the with admin option in creation of the roles, then that particular user can grant the role access to other users. Otherwise he can use the role but he cannot grant the access to other users. While revoking also, you can revoke only the admin option if you want, or you can revoke the whole role also from any of the existing users. So this is a real-time example how these roles will be aligned with. We have the application HR and we have the application payroll, and we have only the HR read users, we have the payroll read users, and we have some users who has to access both HR and pay for read purpose and both HR and pay for read and write purpose. We have different roles of different employees. So how we will align the roles by giving accesses. Okay, so here you can see the statements how we will build this environment. We have two applications. Few people are only read, few people are reading both the applications, and few people are responsible for writing and reading the data. So how we will align such an environment here? Just see all these statements, how we create this environment in a real time. Okay. And this is a simple exercise what you can do and observe what happens if you won't do some scenarios. So just go through this and we'll see the rest of the roles and profiles. The exercises tomorrow. We'll continue the roles and profiles tomorrow. Any questions, anyone? Okay, good. So we'll stop here for this. I will just leave and I will come back in 1 minute. Please be on the lines. Okay, who are opted for development, please be on lines. I'll be joining back in 1 minute. Thank you.